I've said this before, I think I posted it. The thing she said to me consisted of, she said to others, always remember you black, and what you do is for black people. And you did, I did a lot of other things, but when you think about the situations of the day, how poignant that is right now. It needed to be done. It needed to be done better every year. And we all know when we've had moments where you might think or you forget who you are, and you get reminded that you are black. And if you're doing stuff and you forget, the result has some impact, either by omission or commission on black people. And that was just something that, her brilliance made you continue to understand that, because she cared about you and she cared about black people.
We explained it good enough the first time. I thought we explained it good enough the first time.
The class struggle existence is the beginning. It is always.
Andrea Harris was, and even up in glory, is a black woman. She cared not just intellectually, but in her soul about black people, about other marginalized people, and about women.
The people shouldn't have to hold the state accountable. The state should just be accountable. Power to the people. Power to the people. Power to the people. Power to the people.
See it here, these are non-Hispanic whites and non-Hispanic blacks. The non-Hispanic blacks in gold, the whites are in dark blue. You see that we are again to the left of 18 to 44, at 18 to 44 and to the left, preponderance of our population. The white population is this aging population. They're older and have lower fertility rates, so that's what's going to drive population change. So I don't know what your philosophy and view is on immigration and all of that, the demographic change, but it's very predictable. You can see the changes. You can sit at the wheel and sleep if you want to. I told you, don't call me and say, I'm out of business. Look at the numbers. They speak for themselves. They don't lie.
Businesses that are growing most rapidly, that are generating jobs, that are creating all of the innovation are small businesses. Small businesses are 13 times more innovative on a per worker basis than our large corporations. That's where the engine of growth is coming from. Minority businesses are growing 3 times as fast as our small businesses. And businesses that understand the growing and increasingly diverse business environment, both domestically and internationally, are those that will be better positioned to take advantage of that, so that while we are confronted with enormous challenges, the changing world environment also opens up tremendous opportunities, and we need to be aware of that.
Yeah, the Executive Networking Conference was a way to collect.
Was that her? Did she come up with the idea, or?
Well, I think it was a bunch of business people. What she's found out was that a bunch of people, majority people would. She said we need to get Black people and Hispanic people and Asian people and Latino and Indian people together with white corporate leaders. We knew that people did business with people they knew. But then she also said people do business with people they like. And so how do you get people to learn to like each other, to build relationships? And so there were a group of African American leaders who would go down to Pinehurst and play golf and play cards. And she learned about that. And she said, wow, Pinehurst. We also know a lot of the corporate leaders like Pinehurst as a destination place.
The thing that was always so tremendous about ENC, it was right on time. My year didn't start, I was like, I need to know exactly what I need to do and not do moving forward. ENC is what's gonna make it happen.
During my time in working with her, I said, let's move this name from golf and tennis to Executive Networking Conference. So it could fit under a conference space, we can raise money and also make sure we raise the content and bring in corporate leaders. I mean, we were blessed, man. We had 3 of the richest people in America be speakers at our conference. We've had Janice Howroyd, Brian Howroyd, who's a North Carolina native, come be a speaker. We've had Dave Stewart, who runs a $8 billion business, be a speaker. We've had Junior Bridgman, who was the largest franchise owner of all franchises and now is a Coca-Cola distributor in Canada and in the Midwest. I mean, you think about the 3 largest Black businesses today.
I think the biggest thing that Andrea pushed was the fact that, first of all, people did business with people that they knew, okay? And so one of the things that this whole ENC was designed to do was to give us a better chance to get to know each other, okay? And because many times we're always running, as from a time standpoint in our jobs or in our family life, but this particular weekend was set aside to kind of slow down to give people that opportunity to know each other. I mean, interestingly, Andrea came about, I think, at the height of the civil rights kind of initiative, so to speak. And she has kind of served as the bridge between civil rights and now economic rights. Because obviously if you didn't have that economic right, okay, the civil right was really not a whole lot. I mean, yeah, it allowed you to go certain places, but could you really be a part of the so-called American dream if you didn't have that economic piece as well? So that was one thing that Andrew was always pushing us, because now we have the right, but do we have the rights, the financing, the relationships, the opportunities to really take advantage of these new civil rights that we have?
So my first experience with ENC was as a banker. At what venue could I have access to executives on a personal level? You don't get that in your company. It's rare that you get that in your company. But in that space, I could literally be sitting right next to a corporate CEO or an executive vice president of a corporation that I would have never had an opportunity to do that with in the past.
When you think of ENC and you think of Ms. Harris, you have to go back, the wisdom to have that organization to support in a systemic way, in a strategic way, minority businesses that wasn't necessarily coming to be transparent. Some work was being done by, the council which I ran. Some work was being done in local cities on the state level. but nobody was doing it in a powerful way the way she was. She could garner money, she understood grants and bids, she knew what money was available in places nobody else might not know, and she had the leverage to make sure it got to the right places. So, you know, ENC was as powerful, and she was, and I always said this, she was the most powerful woman in the state when it came to minority development, if not just as powerful political woman that I knew in the state.
I felt like I was in a national event. The CEOs, finance officers, heads of procurement. I said, this is terrific. It really elevated the issue of supplier diversity and how important connections were. And I'm a lifelong golfer, so the excuse to play golf, but to be in a, to your point, to be in a golf cart with a nonprofit leader, a minority business owner, just got us connected. But I was so impressed, having come from commercial bank. I said, this is more like a commercial banking, which is exactly what it was. It's about commerce together.
We can't find nobody, okay? We can't find anybody. So she took that argument away, okay? Not only have I found them, and they're right here today. They're ready to talk to you. I mean, they got the cars, they got the website. I mean, they got the financial backing, okay? So she was able to take away that argument, we can't find nobody. Okay, we'll go out and find them for you. We're gonna put you in the same room together, put you on the same golf cart, you know, put you at the same dinner table, okay? So you will not be able to say, we can't find anybody.
People were more inclined to make a commitment in that environment than they were otherwise. I mean, they wouldn't nearly give you the amount of time that you could get on a weekend talking, and particularly after Andrea and some of the speakers that she brought finished speaking. If you weren't motivated, if you weren't convicted, it was likely you would be after after the sessions were over. And just the opportunity to sort of interact with people, whether it's on the golf course or sitting around just having a chat, was a great environment to expand your relationships.
We were one of the first conferences that I'm aware of that were able to bring in these great leaders from, like, the National Minority Supply Development Council president, leader Harriet Michelle was one of our speakers. We brought in Susan R. Allen, who is on the National Asian, Pan-Asian Council. She came down. We've had Ron Busby, who was the U.S. Black Chambers president. We've had the Native American champions been there. We've had leaders throughout the country that comes to Pinehurst in North Carolina. This all birthed out of Ms. Harris's thought. We had Julianne Mavo, an economist, to come down and tell us about the economy. We have Janetta Cole, a stateswoman in education and in business, and help create processes. And then also we've had great corporate leaders like Willie Deese, who was a Chief Procurement Officer and Vice President at Merck, and you just get really excited. And then we've had people that are local. When we created the Bob Brown Trailblazer Award, given to Bob Brown, who was a key element in Nixon's administration that started black capitalism and infused and catalyzed the Minority Business Development Agency, which is now the largest minority business funded organization in the government. So we've had all those people. When you start to catalog the capacity of and the capabilities of the businesses that have been there and how they've grown, and the leaders that we've had to speak, and the political leaders that we've had to speak, it's a powerful, energizing environment. But that was a place where we've probably done over $500 million of transactions because people got a chance to know one another, build a relationship, use that social capital, transfer that social capital into marketing capital, and that marketing capital end up being contract capital. So not only get a chance to be able to come together with people to learn and who they are, so you get a chance to know the people, like the people, you began to build this thing called trust. And business is built on the railways and the highways of trust. And that trust is sometimes built in social networks. And so it gave people of color a chance to engage in an environment of social capital, which was the undergirding process to get to the capital and contracts. So it's really an exciting time. We did that for about 16 years together and really enjoyed that work.
Fortunately, I was one of the persons that was very involved in the creation of this event back in the 80s. And one of the reasons why we put it in place was because we recognized that we were communicating and socializing with each other within the minority business community, but there was very little interaction in the true corporate community and among the senior executives. And that's why we put this in place.
The Executive Networking Conference is a premier event and opportunity for minority-owned businesses and corporate representatives to build relationships, to get to know one another, and to do business. If there's anything that we've learned over the last few years, it is that people really do business in informal, non-rigid environments. And we are very excited about the Executive Networking Conference. As each year it gets better in providing information and little education to all of the participants and others, so that we all have a real understanding of the value of supplier diversity.
It is my favorite conference, and I do a lot of conferences. What I'm trying to do is to invite people to think differently about supplier diversity, about minority business development. How can they, as corporations, use supplier diversity as a competitive tool? How can they build a program that adds competitive value to their companies? And so we led them through a process. We will lead them through a process that talks about the elements of a competitive supplier diversity program. But it's a change in thought, a change in processes, and change in activities.
You do get to become more on a personalized basis with those people that can advocate for you, either with other businesses or within corporations. It also gives you more insight into what the trends are that are occurring in corporate America or in purchasing overall, that can then help you do better with aligning your business goals and business strategies to what's going on in the world.
It's hugely important because you can come here at a grouping and at a conference like this, and you can learn so many things. You can meet many people who you would never have a chance to get inside their office or meet them. CEOs and other top people in industry, people who have done so many different things and who have already proven that they can make it happen. And you can see how they can make it happen, and sometimes you can get one idea from a meeting like this that can take you on to the sky and make you hugely successful. This was something that I advocated many, many years ago. We started advocating this sort of thing when I worked for President Nixon. I was one of his assistants, and we started the whole Minority Enterprise Program.
There's been no real central agency for Indians in the state. I mean, Indians are a little bit different, and the way they do business is a little bit different because they're more community oriented. They're a less trusting people for lots of reasons that I won't go into. And the other business problem that we have, if you would consider it a problem, is that we're tribal. We still operate in tribes. You know, we've got 8 tribes in the state. I am the leader of one of those tribes as well as the leader of the initiative, so I can speak from a tribal perspective as well. Let me go back and say this. I think Andrea and the Institute have done a marvelous job at taking a very, very deep stab at collecting all data for all minority folks, because in their buying power guide, they list Indian data. As a matter of fact, it's so good that we use it for our Indian associates, because Indian folks have not done a very good job on their own of collecting their own data.
The level of people here seem to be much higher than the other conferences. I mean, we're talking, you know, media, economists that are on CNN, CEOs that, you know, are printed in today's newspaper that are here today, USA Today. You know, that level I don't think I've seen before. And the interaction, personal interaction. So
national speakers, people I read about in Black Enterprise, Miss Harris had them there. You know, people you see on national board, Miss Harris had them there. That was Wakanda before Black Panther.
But those ENCs, and it's interesting because she would get all those people and what they would do for her. I think sometimes maybe people thought that it would roll down to everybody else. No, people did things for her that they wouldn't do for anybody else. Once she got a hold of you, it's very hard to say no to. I don't care what level you were or thought you were. She just had such a command of, and such a presence.
Because Andrea had an impact across a number of different communities, disciplines, industries, and in particular the business industry, because Andrea was able to go in and out of CEOs' doors and make proposals that would be acknowledged and acted upon, that benefited a number of African American in particular and women business enterprises across not only the Triangle but the state. And then she had the same kind of reach and access with state government. She interacted with all governors that I know of since Jim Hunt, and had the opportunity to go in and sit down with secretaries of departments and promote and encourage minority business enterprise engagement and participation.
And she was unapologetic about it long before people were in the streets protesting and burning down police buildings. And I think that's what gives her all the street creds, because, you know, it might be fashionable now, but when she was doing it, it wasn't fashionable. And when she was getting corporations to do things, it wasn't because they had some sense of, you know, whatever it is that's going on right now. It was sheer Miss Harris rolling up on them with some facts.
Well, first of all, Miss Harris shared with the group the possibility of doing major projects with major firms, something that hadn't been done here in the city of Charlotte as on a certain level. So she came and inspired us and shared with us the possibility of doing major contracts with the bank, who at that particular time was in a major growth, Bank of America, here in the city of Charlotte. We're doing some major projects, and she was making sure we was equipped with the tools we needed to participate on some of these projects.
Early on, back when I was chair of the Carolinas Virginia Minority Supply Development Council, Ms. Harris convened all of us from North Carolina. And it just so happened at that time, you had the head of the airports, which was Shelby. You had myself, the head of self-help. But she convened all of us who were heads of large organizations across the United States together. And we were all based in North Carolina. And it was one to make sure we knew one another, we knew how to leverage one another, but more importantly, we were there to support one another and to build on. So when that phone rings and you say, listen, I have this going on, I'm gonna need your help. Can I count on you and your organization to be there for us? And it was like, we all made the agreement, yes, we will be there for one another. And so we're all still in place now in different spaces, but we still leverage one another and support one another on behalf of our diverse suppliers.
Andrea never married, never had kids, so she treated these folk, I mean, she would just treat them like they were her kids, you know. You can't be dressing like that. You gotta watch your mouth. Oh yeah, Andrea was hard, but it was out of love.
She was very passionate about business and ownership, wealth, accumulating assets and wealth that will allow us to, in fact, meet our full potential as a people. Because if we could have the good life as children, matriculate to schools of higher learning, build business and institutions that would speak to what our critical needs are as a people, which then would allow us to contribute to the needs of the society based on who we are.
There was never an HBCU that she didn't love.
What is the story of her life as a graduate of HBCU, as a woman that served on college boards and various places where decisions are made?
We undervalue ourselves. Her notion was, these institutions are valuable, and let me demonstrate their value, and I'm going to demonstrate their value with data. And so that sold a lot better than the social implications.
She also supported all the HBCUs in North Carolina and led a committee to promote and encourage HBCU alumni to engage more with their institutions and be more active and supportive.
HBCUs have to see themselves as a resource, a valued resource. We're not just an appendage that just exists in the community, but we are an integral part of it.
Even if one's talking about Bennett College, where I served as the president, where she was a member of the board, even at the day of her passing, she was a member of that board. That is a college rooted in social justice. After all, it began, like all of our HBCUs, because black folk were not allowed to go to white folks' colleges and universities. And so you cannot separate our historically black colleges and universities from a social justice agenda.
They take the student where she is and then begins to mold. HBCUs like Bennett allowed the woman to understand what she could be. That maybe she doesn't have the resources, maybe she didn't have the teacher in high school who motivated or who encouraged her, but at Bennett she does. There's somebody there she's going to encounter, whether a professor or a counselor or a residence hall director or an alumni affairs director, who sees that this child is just a woman in the rough who's going to be an Andrea Harris later on in life.
Andrea put forward and got people involved in a study to show the disparities in what the HBCUs were receiving as opposed to what the white institutions were receiving. This was one of the very first major projects that I knew that she had a hand in, and how it worked out, how a bond issue came up, and we got more money out of that bond issue for the historically black colleges and universities than we ever thought that we would get, because of the input that Andrea had in getting the study done.
We talked about HBCUs all the time, because that was one of the things that I'm working on in the Congress, and not only because of what an HBCU did for me. So we shared a lot of the same passion, and maybe that's why we got along so well.
We did make modifications to the HBCU Capital Loan Program. One of the final things that we were working on, which was trying to get that debt forgiven, because it didn't get forgiven in the Great Recession. And though it happened after her death this year, the HBCU Capital Loan forgave over $1 billion worth of loans for HBCUs who had gone through that program. And that included Bennett College for women's $30+ million. So, she lives on, and all the things that she was fighting for. Representative Adams got that done this year in the CARES Act. So it's official.
what I learned is the reason for being is a really compelling one. I don't think that I can identify in my own educational path the level of personal development that alums and students of Bennett articulated. You don't get that from a big, predominantly white campus. You just don't get that. And so I really walked away excited about the future for Bennett College and hopeful that the campus will be able to express to more people what makes it a special place. There are not a lot of spaces like that for African American women. I get why she works so hard to keep that space alive and well.